The phone call came at 2:47 inches the afternoon on a Tuesday in March. I was in my wood shop behind the house, sanding down a cherry wood cabinet I'd been working on for the Hendersons down the street. The smell of sawdust hung in the air, and CBC radio was playing something classical I couldn't name. "Is this Robert Mackenzie?" The voice was professional, clipped. "Speaking. Mr. Mackenzie, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Vancouver Police Department. I'm calling about a matter that requires your immediate attention. We need you to come down to the morgue to identify a body." My hand stopped mid-stroke on the sandpaper. "I'm sorry, what?" "Sir, we have a deceased individual, and according to the identification found on her person, she's listed you as her emergency contact. Her name is Jennifer Mackenzie. She's your daughter." I set down the sandpaper carefully, my mind racing. "Detective, I think there's been a mistake. I don't have a daughter named Jennifer. I don't have a daughter at all. I have two sons, Thomas and David." There was a pause on the other end, papers rustling. "Mr. Mackenzie, the deceased is approximately 35 years old, born in 1989. Does that timeline mean anything to you?" My throat went dry. That was the year everything fell apart with Catherine, the year of the accident, the year I thought I'd lost everything. "Sir, I understand this is difficult, but we really do need someone to come down and provide identification. If you truly don't know who this person is, that's information we need as well. Can you come down to Vancouver General Hospital? The morgue is in the basement level." I drove the 40 minutes from my place in Burnaby to the hospital in a daze. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Jennifer Mackenzie, born in 1989. It couldn't be. Catherine had told me the baby didn't make it. That was what she'd said when I woke up in the hospital after the crash. My leg shattered in 3 places. My ribs cracked. She'd been crying, her face pale. "The baby didn't make it, Robert. I'm so sorry." I'd been too doped up on painkillers to ask the right questions, too consumed by my own pain and grief. And then, 3 months later, while I was still learning to walk again with a cane, Catherine left. Packed her bags while I was at physiotherapy and disappeared. Left a note saying she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't look at me without thinking about what we'd lost. I never heard from her again. The divorce papers came through a lawyer 6 months later. I signed them. What else could I do? Thomas was 7 and David was 5. They needed me to hold it together. So I did. I built furniture, raised my boys, and tried not to think about Catherine or the baby we'd lost. Detective Chen was waiting for me in the hallway outside the morgue. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an expression that had seen too much. "Mr. Mackenzie, thank you for coming." She shook my hand firmly. "I want to prepare you. The deceased shows signs of having taken her own life. Overdose. We found her in a hotel room downtown. There was a note. What did it say? I can't share specifics yet, but it mentioned you. That's partly why we called." She pushed open the door to the morgue. The temperature dropped immediately. Everything was steel and fluorescent lights. "Are you ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The body was on a table, covered with a white sheet. The morgue attendant pulled it back, and I felt the floor tilt under my feet. It was like looking at a ghost. The woman on the table had Catherine's face. Not exactly, but close enough that it stole my breath. Same cheekbones, same nose, same shape to her lips. But her hair was darker than Catherine's had been, nearly black, and even in death, I could see she had my eyes. That particular shade of gray-green that both my sons had inherited. "Do you know her?" Detective Chen asked quietly. I think she might be my daughter." The words came out hoarse, but I didn't know she existed. I was told she died in 1989. The detective's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a story, Mr. Mackenzie. I think we need to talk." We sat in a small interview room. Detective Chen brought coffee that tasted like burnt metal, but I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands. "Tell me about 1989, she said. So I did. I told her about Catherine, about how we'd been high school sweethearts in Victoria, married at 22, had the boys young, about how the pregnancy in 1989 had been a surprise but a welcome one, about the car accident on the Trans-Canada Highway that January, black ice sending us spinning into a ditch, about waking up in the hospital and being told the baby was gone. "Did you see a death certificate?" Detective Chen asked. I shook my head slowly. I was pretty messed up. Catherine handled all of that. I assumed she'd buried the baby while I was recovering. We never talked about it. It was too painful. Mr. Mackenzie, I don't think that baby died. She slid a manila folder across the table. Jennifer Mackenzie, born January 15th, 1989 at Victoria General Hospital. Birth weight, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Mother, Catherine Ann Mackenzie. Father, Robert James Mackenzie. That's you, isn't it? I stared at the birth certificate. My name, right there in black and white. I never saw this. No, I don't suppose you did. She pulled out another document. Adoption papers. Filed April 1989. Your wife placed the baby for adoption through a private agency, Greystone Family Services. Do you recognize that name? No. The father's signature line is blank. According to adoption law in British Columbia, both parents need to sign off unless one is deceased or unable. Your wife must have claimed you were incapacitated due to the accident. My head was spinning. But why? Why would she do that? That's what I'd like to know. Detective Chen pulled out more papers. Because here's where it gets interesting. Greystone Family Services doesn't have a record of where Jennifer was placed. The file is incomplete, and the agency itself was investigated in 1995 for illegal adoptions. They were selling babies, Mr. Mackenzie, to wealthy families willing to pay premium prices for healthy white infants. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. You're saying Catherine sold our daughter. I'm saying it's a possibility we need to investigate. She opened another folder. This one had photographs. Jennifer's apartment. We searched it after finding her body. She'd been doing her own investigation. Look at this. The photos showed a wall covered in papers. Newspaper clippings, documents, family trees drawn in marker. And in the center, a photograph I recognized. It was from my wedding day. Me and Catherine, young and smiling, standing in front of St. Andrew's Cathedral in Victoria. She knew about me, I said quietly. She was looking for me. More than that, Detective Chen pulled out a photocopy of a handwritten note. This was in her apartment. It's a list of people and amounts. Look at the names. I scanned the list. Didn't recognize any of them. Then I got to the bottom. Catherine Whitmore. That was Catherine's maiden name. And next to it, $50,000. 1,989. Your wife was paid $50,000, Detective Chen said. That's about $95,000 in today's money. Quite a sum. Where is Catherine now? My voice didn't sound like my own. That's what we need to find out. She leaned forward. Mr. Mackenzie, I need to ask. Did your sons know they had a sister? No. God, no. They thought the baby died, just like I did. You might want to tell them. Because I think Jennifer spent the last year of her life trying to find her family, and I think she found something that made her desperate enough to take her own life. I called Thomas from the hospital parking lot. He was a teacher in Calgary now, married with 2 kids. David was in Toronto, working in IT. I told them both the same thing. Come home. There's something we need to talk about. Family emergency. They both caught flights the next day. We met at my house in Burnaby, in the same living room where I'd raised them. I told them everything. Showed them the birth certificate, the adoption papers, the photos from Jennifer's apartment. Thomas went pale. So we had a sister, and Mom sold her. We don't know that for certain, I said, but the words felt hollow. Dad, it's pretty damn obvious. David's jaw was tight. He'd always had Catherine's temper. She took 50 grand and gave away our sister, and lied about it for 35 years. Where the hell is she? That became our mission. Finding Catherine. Detective Chen couldn't officially help much since this wasn't technically part of her investigation into Jennifer's death, but she pointed us in the right direction. Gave us the names of some private investigators she trusted. We hired a man named Gordon Fletcher. He was ex-RCMP, now running his own agency out of a small office in New Westminster. Looked like someone's grandfather, but he had databases and connections that could find anyone. It took him 3 weeks. 3 weeks of going through old phone records, credit reports, social media traces. Catherine had remarried in 1993, became Catherine Brennan, moved to Kelowna, had 2 more children with her new husband. Half-siblings, David said, staring at the information Gordon had compiled. We have half-siblings we never knew about. She built a whole new life, Thomas said quietly, like we never existed. But that wasn't the whole story. Gordon kept digging, and what he found made my blood run cold. Catherine hadn't just sold Jennifer once. She'd been connected to Greystone Family Services for years. Between 1988 and 1995, there were records of 15 payments made to a numbered company that Catherine part-owned. 15 payments of $20,000 to $75,000 each. She was a broker, Gordon explained, spreading documents across his desk. Greystone would identify pregnant women in difficult situations, offer them help, support, prenatal care, then convince them to give up their babies for adoption. Catherine's job was to find the buyers, rich couples who couldn't adopt through legitimate channels, or who wanted to skip the wait lists. She'd match them with babies and take a cut. That's trafficking, David said, his voice shaking. She was trafficking children. In the eyes of the law, it's illegal adoption, Gordon said. But yeah, that's what it amounts to. And Jennifer found out, I said slowly, pieces clicking together. She traced her adoption back to Greystone, found out about Catherine, found out her own mother sold her. Gordon nodded grimly. There's more. Jennifer had been in contact with some of the other adoptees. The Greystone survivors, they call themselves. Adults now who were sold as babies and are trying to find their birth families. Jennifer was helping them build a case. She'd found evidence that could potentially reopen some of these adoptions, prove they were illegal. Who else was involved? Thomas asked. Just Mom? There was a partner. Guy named Richard Brennan. I felt ice flood my veins. That's her husband. Her current husband. Yep. He was the money man behind Greystone. On paper, the agency was run by a woman named Helena Moss, but Richard was the real owner. When Greystone got investigated in 1995, Helena took the fall. Served 18 months for fraud. Richard and Catherine walked away clean, and then got married, David said bitterly. How romantic. They've been living in a $4 million house in Kelowna, Gordon continued. Richard's supposedly a business consultant now. Catherine volunteers at the local hospital. They're pillars of the community. I thought about Jennifer lying in that morgue. My daughter. The one I never got to meet. The one who'd been searching for the truth and found only more betrayal. What did Jennifer's suicide note say? I asked Detective Chen when I called her that evening. You said it mentioned me. There was a long pause. Mr. Mackenzie, are you sure you want to know? Yes. All right. I heard paper rustling. It said, to Robert Mackenzie, the father I never met. I'm sorry I couldn't be brave enough to face you. I spent my whole life feeling unwanted, wondering what I'd done wrong to make my mother give me away. Now I know the truth, and it's worse than anything I imagined. I wasn't given away out of love or sacrifice. I was sold, like property, and the woman who gave birth to me built a whole business doing it to other children. I can't live with that knowledge. I can't live knowing I came from something so corrupt. I hope you can forgive me for not being strong enough. I hope you had a good life with the family you kept. Jennifer. I sat in my woodshop for a long time after that call, just holding the phone. The cherry wood cabinet for the Hendersons sat unfinished in the corner. I couldn't bring myself to care about it. Thomas and David wanted to go to the police, push for charges against Catherine and Richard. But Detective Chen warned us it would be difficult. Most of the crimes were decades old. The statute of limitations had expired on many of them. Helena Moss had already served time, proving that Catherine and Richard were the real masterminds, would require evidence that might not exist anymore. Unless, Gordon said, when we met with him again, we can prove they were still operating after Greystone closed. What do you mean? I asked. Greystone shut down in 1995. But what if they just changed methods? There are always people willing to pay for babies, and Catherine and Richard have been living well beyond their supposed means for 30 years. It became an obsession. The three of us, 4 when Gordon was available, spent every spare moment digging into Catherine and Richard's finances. We filed Freedom of Information requests. We tracked down former Greystone employees. We connected with the Greystone Survivors Group and interviewed dozens of adoptees. A pattern emerged. Between 1996 and 2010, at least 8 more suspicious adoptions had connections to Catherine and Richard. They'd gotten smarter. Instead of using an agency, they worked through private arrangements, found pregnant teenagers, women in crisis, women with addiction issues, offered them money and support, then facilitated adoptions that skirted legal requirements. One woman, Melissa, broke down crying when we interviewed her over Zoom. She was 42 now, living in Medicine Hat. "I was 15 in 1997, she said. "I got pregnant by my boyfriend. My parents kicked me out. This woman, Catherine, she found me at a youth shelter. Said she could help. Gave me a place to stay. Paid for everything. Then when I had the baby, she said she'd found a perfect family. Made it sound like it was all official and legal. I signed papers I didn't understand. They gave me $10,000 and told me never to contact the baby. I was just a kid. I didn't know any better." "Did you ever try to find your child?" Thomas asked gently. "I tried once, when I was 25. Hired a lawyer. But the adoption records were sealed. The lawyer said it looked like it had gone through private channels, not the ministry. He couldn't find any record of the adoptive family." She wiped her eyes. "I always wondered if my baby was okay, if they were happy. Now I don't even know if the adoption was real." We found 7 more stories like Melissa's. 7 more women who'd been teenagers or in their early 20s, vulnerable and desperate, who Catherine had helped and then taken their babies. The money trail was harder to track, but Gordon managed to find bank records showing regular cash deposits into Catherine's accounts through the 2000s. "We need to take this to the police," I said finally. "Even if some of it is too old to prosecute, there might be recent enough cases." Detective Chen connected us with the RCMP's Serious Crimes Division. We spent 4 hours in an interview room in Surrey, laying out everything we'd found. The detective sergeant, a man named Morrison, listened carefully and took notes. "This is good work," he said finally. "You've essentially done half our investigation for us. But I need to be straight with you. Building a criminal case is going to be tough. Most of these adoptions happened years ago. The witnesses are scattered. Some of the birth mothers might not want to cooperate because they're ashamed or afraid. But you'll investigate?" David pressed. "We'll investigate. But I can't promise charges. And even if we do lay charges, there's no guarantee of conviction." It wasn't enough. We'd spent months uncovering the truth about what Catherine and Richard had done, about the lives they'd destroyed, and the system was telling us they might walk away free. That's when Thomas had an idea. "What about the court of public opinion?" We contacted the CBC. Pitched them the story. A producer named Amanda Chen was interested immediately. She'd done investigative pieces on adoption fraud before. She started her own research, verifying everything we'd found. She interviewed the Greystone survivors. She tracked down more birth mothers. She got legal experts to explain how the private adoption system had been exploited. 6 months after Jennifer's death, CBC's The Fifth Estate aired a documentary called Sold: The Greystone Baby Scandal. It featured my story. Thomas and David appeared on camera, talking about their sister they never knew. Melissa and 4 other birth mothers told their stories. The documentary laid out the evidence against Catherine and Richard in detail. The response was immediate and massive. The story went viral. Within 24 hours, 10 more birth mothers had come forward. The RCMP announced they were expanding their investigation. The Premier of British Columbia ordered a review of adoption laws and historical adoption records. Catherine and Richard tried to hide. They deleted their social media accounts. Richard resigned from the boards of the charities he'd been on. But it was too late. The court of public opinion had already convicted them. 3 weeks after the documentary aired, the RCMP laid charges. Catherine was charged with fraud, child trafficking, and conspiracy. Richard faced the same charges, plus money laundering. Helena Moss, the woman who'd taken the fall for Greystone back in 1995, agreed to testify against them in exchange for immunity. The trial took 8 months. Thomas and David came back to Vancouver. We sat in the courtroom every single day, watching as prosecutors laid out the case. Birth mothers testified, many of them crying. Adoptees who'd been sold as babies told stories of growing up feeling like something was wrong with their adoptions. Financial experts traced money from desperate mothers to Catherine and Richard's accounts to wealthy families who'd paid premium prices for babies. Catherine never looked at me once during the trial. She sat at the defense table in expensive clothes, her hair perfectly styled, and stared straight ahead like none of us existed. She was 62 now, but she'd aged well, still beautiful in that cold, polished way she'd always had. Richard, on the other hand, looked diminished. He was 65, balding, with liver spots on his hands. He kept glancing at the jury, then at Catherine, like he was trying to figure out how they'd ended up here. The prosecution's closing argument lasted 3 hours. The defense tried to argue that Catherine and Richard had been helping women in crisis, that the money was payment for expenses, that everything had been legal under the private adoption framework at the time. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty, on all counts, both of them. I thought I'd feel something when the verdict was read. Relief, maybe. Satisfaction. Justice. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired and old and sad for all the years that had been stolen. From Jennifer, from the other adoptees, from the birth mothers, from me and my sons. The judge gave them each 12 years, with parole eligibility after 6. Catherine's 2 younger children, adults now, sat in the back of the courtroom and cried. After it was over, Thomas and David and I went to Lighthouse Park in West Vancouver. We stood at the edge of the cliff, looking out over the water toward Vancouver Island. I'd brought Jennifer's ashes with me. The medical examiner had released them months ago. I'd kept them in my wood shop, not sure what to do with them. She would have liked it here, Thomas said quietly. Would have liked the view. I opened the urn. The wind caught the ashes and carried them out over the water, over the same strait that separated Vancouver from Victoria, the city where Jennifer was born, where I'd thought I'd lost her 35 years ago. I'm sorry, I said to the wind. I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry you grew up thinking you weren't wanted. David put his hand on my shoulder. She knew at the end. Dad, the detective said she left the note for you. She wanted you to know it wasn't your fault. But it felt like my fault anyway. I'd been so consumed by my own grief and pain after the accident that I'd never questioned Catherine's story, never asked to see death certificates or burial records, never demanded proof. I just accepted what I was told and moved on because it was easier than facing the truth. We stood there until the sun started to set, painting the water orange and gold. 3 men who should have been 4. A family that had been fractured before it ever had a chance to form. The Greystone case changed adoption law in British Columbia. The province created a new review board to examine historical adoptions for signs of coercion or fraud. They opened up sealed records for adoptees who wanted to search for their birth families. They strengthened requirements for private adoptions and increased penalties for illegal adoptions. The Greystone Survivors Group became a foundation. They help adoptees navigate the search for their birth families. They advocate for adoptee rights. They provide support for people who discover their adoptions weren't what they thought they were. Thomas serves on the board. He says it helps him feel connected to the sister he never met. David wrote a book about the whole experience. The Sister I Never Knew, One Family's Journey Through Adoption Fraud. The proceeds go to the Greystone Survivors Foundation. He says Jennifer would have wanted her story to help others. As for me, I still work in my wood shop, still make furniture for neighbors, but now I also make memory boxes, small, carefully crafted wooden boxes for adoptees to keep mementos from their searches, for birth mothers to hold on to memories of the children they lost, for families torn apart by lies to store pieces of their truth. I think about Jennifer every day. I wonder what she was like, what her laugh sounded like, what she dreamed about. Whether she inherited my love of woodworking or Catherine's sharp intelligence, or some combination that was uniquely hers. I think about all the moments I missed. First steps, first day of school, graduation, maybe a wedding, maybe grandchildren I'll never meet. All of it stolen by greed and lies and cruelty. But I also think about the good that came from the darkness. The other families reunited through the investigation. The birth mothers who finally learned what happened to their children. The adoptees who found answers to questions they'd carried their whole lives. The laws changed. The justice served. It doesn't bring Jennifer back. Nothing will ever do that. But it means her death wasn't meaningless. She spent the last year of her life trying to expose the truth about Greystone, and in dying, she succeeded. She brought down the whole rotten system. She gave other people the chance at truth that she never got for herself. Sometimes, late at night in my workshop, I talk to her. I tell her about her brothers, about the grandchildren she would have had, nieces and nephews, about the life she should have had. I apologize again and again for not knowing, for not finding her sooner, for not being there when she needed a father most. And sometimes, when the wind is right and the sawdust catches the light just so, I like to think she can hear me. I like to think she knows that she was wanted, that she was loved, that she always had a family, even if we never got the chance to be one. If there's anything I've learned from this nightmare, it's that secrets have a weight to them. They press down on us, generation after generation, until someone is brave enough or desperate enough to drag them into the light. Jennifer was that person for our family. She paid the ultimate price for the truth, but she freed the rest of us from lies we didn't even know we were living. To anyone reading this, anyone who has secrets in their family history, anyone who suspects something isn't quite right about their own story, dig for the truth. It's going to hurt. It might destroy relationships. It might upend everything you thought you knew about your family. But the truth, however painful, is always better than living in a lie. And to anyone who has lost someone to suicide, anyone who carries the guilt and the what-ifs and the if-onlys, you didn't fail them. The world failed them. The systems failed them. The people who hurt them failed them. Your love wasn't enough to overcome all that pain. And that's not your fault. We can only do our best with the information we have. We can only love as hard as we're able. Sometimes that's not enough, and we have to find a way to live with that. I'm 73 now. I've lived more years without Jennifer than she got to live at all. I've built hundreds of pieces of furniture, raised two good men who became good fathers themselves, saw Catherine and Richard go to prison, helped change laws that might protect other children from being sold like property. But I'll never stop wishing I'd had the chance to know my daughter. Never stop wondering what she would have become if she'd been given the life she deserved. Never stop carrying the weight of all those lost years. That's the real cost of Catherine's crimes. Not the money she made, not the prison time she's serving, but the erasure of possibility, the theft of futures, the destruction of what could have been. Jennifer Mackenzie deserved better. All those children deserved better. And the only thing we can do now is make sure it never happens again. Make sure truth wins over lies. Make sure justice, however delayed, eventually arrives. That's my promise to the daughter I never knew. That's the promise I keep every day in my workshop, building things meant to last, creating something solid and real out of all this pain. Some losses you never recover from. You just learn to carry them differently.